Oh, I didn't hear you come in. How are you? Well, don't just stand there. Have a seat. Oh, there's Giblet. Don't be afraid to get acquainted, you two. The little guy won't bite. So in my last video, y'all basically demanded to know how I take notes and how I start world building projects. And luckily for y'all, I'm happy to oblige. Also, that video did much better than I could have dreamed. Like, if you watched it, thank you for doing so, and I'm very glad you're here now. Thank you so much. A little note, this video's title is a tad bit clickbaity because this is about how I perform my world building, not a strict guide on how you should start a world building project. If you're looking for that, please don't. It'll be an endless pursuit because you have a process that works for you, and no YouTuber, blogger, or author is gonna have the precise process you do. So why am I making this video then? Because I believe it is still valuable to absorb that sort of content if you're still in the early stages of your creative journey. Seeing how I and others do a thing can provide you with ideas on how you can also do that thing, even if it's not exactly the same as how the person presented it. Not all tools are going to be useful for you, but it's valuable to learn about as many as you can get your hands on so you can build your own artistic machine. But that doesn't mean you should spend all your time watching world-building YouTube videos. Click off this video if you need to, especially if you've been sludging through YouTube for the past few hours. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Go take care of yourself. But yeah, you should also give plenty of time to try out the tools that are given to you, to tinker and figure out if they help you build your machine. That note was longer than a lil. Sorry about that. On to the meat of things. Back in 2021, I got really into how I organize my writing and world building, and made a whole ton of templates to make starting notes and gathering details a lot easier. More on those later. I recommend you also do this sort of exploration. Even if it means you aren't actively working on your world building itself for a little bit, I think it's really valuable to figure out what note-taking method works best for you. You may find that the computer is where your brain lives. This is me. I live here, in my computer. You can see the little bed, like right there. But that doesn't mean I've never doodled in sketchbooks. I don't have a convenient way to sketch digitally, so using a pen and paper will have to do. I'm downplaying my enjoyment, but I do enjoy sketching. You may find that your brain lives on paper. My partner is like this. They have a ton of sketchbooks and journals that they bring with them wherever they go and take notes whenever the inspiration strikes. It's really cool. So go experiment for yourself. It's a hugely rewarding endeavor. Through my experimenting, I went from several different wiki-making programs and eventually landed on Obsidian. At this point, unless Obsidian gets shut down for whatever reason and I lose access, I am not switching because, look at all these notes. I am not moving these. If you haven't heard of Obsidian before, it's a free note-taking program where you can quickly create and link together notes. The base is pretty basic, but there are plenty of plugins you can find on the internet. Anyways, Obsidian. This is what it looks like. Collections of notes and folders are called vaults, similar to projects or workstations in other programs, and you can easily switch vaults if you're working on multiple big projects at once. I tend to just keep all my world building in one huge vault. It's a little unwieldy, but it's nothing I can't scroll through, and there's a search bar I never use, but easily could. I don't know why I don't, but it's there. I recommend using it. And you saw a few moments ago the graph feature. That's right, you can visualize what your notes look like with all their connections. My connections are so crazy because I got this whole system of templates and universes. I really like to treat mine like a world-building wiki. It's just how my mind wants to work. I can just click through from page to page and it's so smooth. You can also tag stuff to connect similar pages and be able to search them easier. I like to throw these tags at the bottom of all of my pages. I don't actually use the tag system a lot, but, just in case I get around to using it, I guess. It's useful, but enough of that. I organize my folders in a very top-down structure. So you got the multiverse as a whole, grand reality, then all the universes I've started developing so far. This may look like a lot, but most of these are little more than single notes overviewing each universe. Really only universes I and A are really developed, and universes J and G are kind of developed. I alphabetize them based off not when I thought of them, but when I started to actually develop them. And a lot of these realities have proper names now, by the way. Like, Universe A is the universe of Gen, the one I've been building for 9 going on 10 years now. And I is the universe of Elris, of the Seven Forces, if you've seen those videos. Within each universe folder, I split things into physical places, cultures, characters, and any broad universe stuff, like history, physical laws, whatever. And for the physical places, I go from galaxies down to solar systems to planets and, well, you get the idea. It's a fun little system. It makes my brain, I don't know, do like somersaults or something. Outside Grand Reality, I got some more folders. Who would have guessed? I'm not going to take all your time explaining it all, since most are not relevant to world building. I got some story notes in this guy, including a grand list of novel, short story, and general world building ideas, something I recommend every writer have and add to, no matter how small the ideas are. It's great to look back on when you get writer's block, even if it's just to get an idea for a minor character or how a scene will go. Anyways, time for the title of the video. I'll get into templates towards the end if you're interested in that. As I said earlier, and in the entire previous video, there is no right way to world build. So I want to make sure to word all this in a, here's a potential option for how you can do this sort of way. I've also gone through my process more closely in my old Let's World Build series. It's unfinished and approaching 2 years old now, so keep in mind that some things will have changed, but it covers my early process pretty well. I'm most likely not going to continue it since it's been a while, but it exists. I want to explore my idea gathering process more in my next video, but I'll give the blueprints here. Let's go to the garden actually. It's getting a little stuffy in here. I like to physically move location every couple hours or so while I'm working. It just seems to get my mind moving smoother. I recommend you try it at least. It works for me. Okay, so I know this answer isn't very satisfying, but I cast quite the wide net for my ideas. Sometimes the little fishies it catches come in the form of intriguing conversations with friends or family, which can be the tastiest ideas, let me tell you. And sometimes they're from whatever art I'm consuming. Even though I'm primarily a world builder and a writer, I find inspiration from basically everywhere. From music, to visual art, to podcasts, to YouTube videos, to, yes, books. My pants would be on fire if I said the inspirational fish I gather aren't mostly from books, but that doesn't lessen the value of the other fish. Okay, I think I've worn out this fish metaphor by now, so that's over. That's just the idea gathering phase. It's the easiest part for me. You should see the absolute state of my story idea list. The hard part is actually committing to an idea and enacting it. Well, I guess you first have to select an idea, so what criteria do I use? Depends on the story. If it's purely for a world building project, which is how 90% of my universes started, then there's literally no criteria other than, is this cool enough? Do I want a magic system that's basically a programming language? Do I want a god that really likes the color red? What about a planet that has all floating islands? As you can see, they don't have to all be fully original for me to start on a world. I've found it's in how you compose a piece of art, how you combine borrowed elements that make a piece yours. What about world building for a story? Depends on how much you want to focus on your setting and on the type and genre of your story. If you're the sort of person whose settings are only as deep as what's shown on the page, then congrats. You can basically just world build as you plot and write your story. And your notes can be no more detailed than a list of facts you keep track of for consistency's sake. Beyond that, how much world prep you want to do before typing the first page of your story is directly proportional to how deep you want your setting to be. Notice, I did not say how deep your setting appears to the reader. That's often tied to how deep your world actually is, but not necessarily. It's beyond the scope of this video, but many authors have thin veneers of worlds that still come across as very rich on the page, so it's very doable. Genre seems to have a very broad effect on world building. For example, romance novels, even if they're romantasy, tend to have less focus on setting than space operas do. But this is a trend, not a rule, which is to say do not let your genre define you. Even if I can't list any off the top of my head as I write this script, I can guarantee you that romance stories with very rich and sweeping worlds do exist. Short fiction, anything from 0 to 25,000 words in my conception, tends to suffer when there's too big a scope, and is preferably more theme or idea-based than characters-based. But again, this is not a rule. This is all to say that typically not much is demanded of the setting, so there's less pressure to world build, if you're only writing one short story in this world. My advice is that if you have a cool short story idea, try to fit it into an existing world or universe of yours, as that will vastly reduce the amount of setting work you have to do, and it'll give your stories a cool sense of connectedness. Novels and series for me demand scope. They want enough story meat to be gnawed on for tens or hundreds of thousands of words, and that typically also means world meat. So you can expect a bunch more setting work in your future, which might be a good or bad thing depending on what your preferences are. I don't know you. My advice here is to please make sure whatever worlds you're making make internal sense, because not doing so is very likely to send your characters careening into plot holes and corners they can't get out of without a ton of reworking your world building. It's happened to me, and it can happen to you. Also, if you have hopes of publishing your work in a timely manner, be wary of world builder's disease. It can be very easy to get sucked into the inner details of your settings while chapters languish in your plot outline. Once you got the bug, it can be hard to kick. It's happened to me, and it can happen to you. So with all that relatively settled, on to... I got a little derailed to the writing part of things. Do let me know if you want a video detailing how I write my stories, coming from someone who hasn't published a book, to be fair, but I can still offer insight from someone who's completed 2 novel drafts and several short stories. Allow me to re-rail. To rail? No, that sounds worse. Anyways, come with me to the sketchbook. A thing I want to push myself to do along every step of the way is challenge myself to not just copy what our world offers, to live fully in the world I've created, see things through my culture's eyes, to not just hand-wave the fashion and make it be vaguely medieval, to not make the guns look like ours, the book-binding methods like ours. This doesn't mean I think you should make every single detail different from our universe. If you want to, if it's a purely artistic venture for you, then yeah, go ahead. But know that it will take a very, very long time. Okay, on to my actual process. I'm away from my computer. Kondraxis, could you get the screen that shows my computer? Okay, thanks. The first thing I do is, well, make the universes folder. Then a universe note doc and all the major folders you saw earlier. I'm huge into top-down world building, where I start with the most fundamental aspects of the whole universe, like the physical laws, the galaxies, the solar systems, then work down to the planets themselves. This may seem tedious, and it can be, but something about it tickles that part of me that loves organization and structure. I want things to make sense. Not perfect sense, mind you. You know, you need a little bit of vagueness and assumptions to make a world-building project work, but I like to make as much sense of it as I can. Once I got all the physical laws and astronomy down, I draw a physical map of the whole planet, then go through the history of the planet from the creation to humans to the birth of civilization and whatnot to whenever I want to start the story. A lot of times I'll get carried away, get really detailed with some minor kingdoms, and then go on to plan out the whole history of the future of the planets. Because I can. Why not? By this point, chances are I've already made several more maps, including a world political map, a few city maps, and a few castle maps, if those exist in this world. Also, characters will come forth through the history phase, or sometimes in the original idea, though I try not to develop them until I get past the history phase. Anyways, the rest is details. Cultures, mythologies, how people use magic, economies, political structures, pets, beliefs, number systems, whatever. Details, details, details. The most important first, then the fun, trivial stuff later that adds flavor. Before I end this section, a little suggestion. Go out and push your world-building boundaries. Sure, if you really enjoy making magic systems, don't stop doing that. Please don't. But if you hate thinking about fashion at all, go out of your way one day to think about it. Set aside an hour, do some research, and outline the fashion of one of your cultures. You'd be surprised what comes out. Something you push yourself to do might turn out to be your favorite part of your world. I wasn't expecting to like the plants of one of my cultures so much until I pushed myself to develop them a little more. I ended up making things I really like trees that are black in the summer and white in the winter, and others that are waxy and corkscrew like DNA. So go out there, push yourself. Warning. You do not have to be nearly this extra with templates. It took me a while to compile all these templates. And by a while, I mean months. Mainly because I tend to work on multiple things concurrently, thereby elongating each thing, but still, a long time. Of course, if this sounds like your thing, then go right ahead. I'll be behind you encouraging you. Because templates are my bread and butter, my magic and maps. If that analogy works very well, I'm not sure, but I love templates. And you can see my organization well at work here. I've got so many template pages for just about any world-building related event, creature, object, or thing. Here's all of them like splayed out. Tag yourself in the comments as to which template you are. Actually, maybe don't. That's real silly, but I'm not going to stop you now that I've said it. I was going to go through a few templates in detail, but that would balloon this video to epic fantasy proportions, and I do have to upload this eventually. So I'll skip over the major bits of the civilization template. Here, I have everything collapsed into the major sections. Most of my templates do not have nearly as many sections. It's just that civilizations are big old chunky things that have lots of culture and government and places in them. Every template has a general section. Open that up. Look at all those subsections. I just go through all these and fill out each one. They're fairly self-explanatory. Ask on my Discord or through my Patreon if you have any specific questions. The notable subsections that are in most every template are etymology, everything's got a name, location, age, and magic, how magic interacts with the thing. Every template also has a history section, or a similar section, with beginning, end, legacy, and forgettance subsections. I like the forgettance section because it's not something you think about a lot, but everything gets forgotten eventually. Fun stuff. Going real quick to the being template, there's some fun stuff I particularly like here, like the most important and favorites sections, and the useful character questions at the end that I try to fill out for main characters because they're honestly very useful questions to ask and to answer, though not all the questions get answers a lot of times. Important note, I do not fill out every little section for every little note I make. That would spin my clock into the next century. No, my rationale with these templates and the sheer amount of stuff I put into them is that I'm trying to cast a very wide net. Not for fish. And when I'm filling out the note for a thing, I scroll through the sections and add to what inspires me to fill it out and or what feels most important. Sometimes it depends on the world itself, what I feel is most important. Also, I'm thinking of putting all my templates on itch.io, either for free or for very little money, and so if you'd like to see that, do comment below. So yeah, goodbye templates. Good seeing you. Hiya, welcome to the corner for cool creations, where I showcase a creation that I very much enjoy. And for the first time, I'm actually showcasing writing. I know, shocking. If you watched the previous video, you may have seen that I called upon you to read Tad Williams. It's because he's currently my favorite author, only just edging out George R.R. Martin, mostly because I like his books a little more, but also because I've been waiting for The Winds of Winter since I first read A Game of Thrones in 2015, and I've been suffering. Oh, suffering so. And I thought Tad Williams writes science fiction and fantasy, though I've only read his trilogy, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, and I recently finished the first book, The Witchwood Crown, in the sequel series, The Last King of Ostenard. I've heard that Otherland, Bobby Dollar, and Shadow March are all really good, but I haven't gotten around to reading them yet. I will. This CFCC is on Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn specifically. On the surface, it's your typical fantasy series. Like, it's got a plucky young protagonist with fairy folk, dragons, an evil force from the frozen north trying to kill humanity, a rebellious princess, an evil king. But it's all done very well, and with political intrigue and drama on the level of A Song of Ice and Fire. Gurm has said it inspired him to write a Soyaf in the first place. Like, look, it's written right there on the first book. The lore just keeps deepening throughout the series, and I am utterly fascinated by the Kaidaya and their history. So read it. Read them. They're really long and will take you a while. Read them. You know the content of the video is probably over when the supporter wall pops up on the screen. This is the supporter wall. You saw it earlier. Link in the description. The Patreon is still new, so there may be changes over the next few months as I figure stuff out, but it's there. It's made. Thank you to Abaletian for being my first patron. I really appreciate it. It's a combined writing YouTube Patreon, so if you're only into the YouTube stuff, there's just going to be extra for you to scroll past, Lamau. There's early access to videos, scripts, and stories, as well as weekly update blogs, your name and credits, and perhaps even your own little guy. That guy's right there, his name is Kata. He's very cool. I have a Discord. It's cool. You can show off your art, your inspirations, and discuss world building. There's a collaborative world building project that some folks in there just decided to do, which is really cool. Oh, and I got my first bit of fan art there, and I really like it. Giblet is Giblet. What else? You can also find me on my websites, my Blue Sky, even though I never post there anymore. Same with my Instagram, whatever. Links below. You know that. You've been around these parts before. Okay, I hope your day will be swell. Giblet wishes you goodbye, and so do I. If Spep bothers you on the way out, you can just ignore him. He can be a little hyperactive sometimes. He doesn't take it personally. Anyways, goodbye. You may find that your brain lives on paper. Your partner. No, mine. No, don't take them. Let me get a water. Let me get a drink of water. Water. That was a good drink of water. Hiya, welcome to the corner for cool creation. Cruel? No.